The UN Security Council was divided during an emergency session over the U.S. capture of Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro. The emergency meeting followed Washington's removal of Maduro from Caracas, an action that has unsettled governments across Latin America and drawn public diplomatic concern. Several delegations questioned the legality of the operation, while others defended it as a response to alleged criminal conduct by Venezuela's leadership. Joining me now to discuss the ordeal of the Venezuelan president in the hands of the U.S. and the global reactions is an international journalist, Thamsanqa Zhou. Thank you very much for joining us, Thamsanqa. Good to have you here for tonight. Let's take a look at this now. What's going on in the world? What's happening here? The U.S. says it acted to enforce the law. Maduro says he was kidnapped from his home. The U.S. had no permission from its own Congress or the UNSC. Even if the allegations against Maduro are true, does any nation have the right to unilaterally seize a sitting foreign leader, or has the U.S. crossed a very dangerous line here?
Well, always good to see you, Mazino, and your viewers as well. So if we start with the reason the post-Second World War order, what is called the rules-based international order, why the UN was set up, why everyone will gather there and respect the UN Charter and what you call the international law that governs how you use force, how you respect borders and sovereignty. It will be a difficult one for any lawyer or international lawyer to argue, but that's not where we are. Politics and international relations and why we have embassies, all that is governed by reality. How do the powers operate? You are talking about the UN Security Council. The reason why they are permanent members of the UN Security Council is because we are not all equal. It's not the case that all UN countries are equal. There are others that have a veto. So in this case, the Americans or Washington as the administration can always tell you that whether there's international law or there isn't, as long as they believe that their interests are threatened, they reserve the right to so act in a way that will protect their rights. So it appears to be what they have done in this case. So I don't think there is any lawyer who would argue otherwise, but the reality is the question that everyone will ask, what are you going to do about it? So in this case, it is the Americans. They've got the power, and they rule the world. So in a way, it's inconsequential to discuss that point. President Maduro will have a way to, in court, he will have his day in court, of course. He will have a very good argument, which could be based on whether the U.S. courts in New York have got jurisdiction, the way that he was, captured and brought forward. But then by that time, I think the calculation in Washington is whatever happens in that court will have been overtaken by political events back in Caracas. So it won't make any difference. If they're going back, the American companies will be having oil by that time.
Thamsanqa, many will argue that with the way that he was captured or removed from Venezuela, that the courts might not be, well, it might just be another kangaroo court. But let's leave that aside. Let's talk about the fact that this is the first time that in modern history that a superpower has physically removed a foreign president to stand trial in its own soil. And there's a list of other countries who perhaps could do this as well. So I'm wondering what precedents this sets, and how might other powerful states use this example to justify future interventions when it comes to weaker countries?
I'm not so sure we're saying that it's unprecedented. Noriega was similar. He tried to appeal to the Vatican. At that point, it still didn't work. It's not too long ago. It's barely a few decades ago.
But he wasn't taken to the United States to stand trial, is the point. This involves a capture of a sovereign leader and taken to foreign soil to stand trial. So if they can do that, why can't Russia go after Zelensky? Why can't whoever go after Netanyahu?
With Noriega, something similar was done. But not only that, there are other leaders that have been removed, using a different model where they say, oh, it's the citizens that have actually taken to the streets and caused the toppling of that. But everyone knows behind the scenes who would have been behind that. And those leaders have been taken to countries abroad. They have been, displayed before the courts, and then years later, then they are pardoned, or they are released, or their convictions are quashed. So, but the bottom line in this case is that because the Americans are so powerful, and this clash that the EU or other members of NATO are having with the US to appeal against Greenland and Denmark and all that, we'll make a determination of how these things are going to pan out. Whether someone who is against the administration in Colombia probably is next. What happens if Guyana is a different person? What about Brazil? What about Argentina? All those countries that are important regionally to the United States. And of course, the Russians and the Chinese, you spoke about Russia there, Ukraine, China, you might talk about Taiwan. It's difficult to see whether this will be done, because President Trump is not going to be in office for a very long time, given how short the American presidential terms are. But so things could change. By 2030, it will be a totally different world, and these kind of things will not be accepted. But it is highly unlikely that if anyone will reverse this, given the economic interests that the Americans stand to have, especially if they have American companies going into the oil wells in Venezuela, the critical minerals in Ukraine and other places. So it appears to me that even countries like Nigeria, the reason why there will be interest from abroad will be what are the resources that Nigeria is offering, and who then comes to Nigeria's defense, or who is an ally. All that will be determined in the new world post Donald Trump by what can that country offer somebody who wants it. Mazino, most of these countries in the West are struggling economically. They need resources, they need money. It's not colonial times anymore. So wherever they can get the resources, oil, critical minerals, rare earth, they will go for them in whatever way.
Thamsanqa, that seems to be what's happening. And well, you say he's not there for too long, but notes that things are happening very fast while he's there. Thamsanqa, thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. We'll always come back to you for more details and your opinion on matters. Thank you very much.